Hello everybody and welcome to OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. I'm Jack and today I'm here with deck analysis on Zygarde-GX. This will probably be one of the last IRL deck analysis videos we do since we now have the set online. I just unfortunately don't have the cards for this deck online, so I wanted to get this deck analysis out for you guys. But hopefully we'll be moving over to TCG very soon. But we're going to kick things straight off. Zygarde is a really strong Pokemon, I think, from the new set. It's just whether the deck itself can be built around to the point where the card can be used. I think there's a lot of good traits about the card. 200 HP is massive, especially for a basic. Fighting types are really good type to be right now, beats up Zoroarks. Plus you've got plenty of options for damage modifiers if you want to play them. Weak to grass is kind of awkward. Golisopod is still probably the most popular Zoroark variant and may still be a popular Zoroark variant going into the Vanillite meta, but I think Zoropod is definitely takes a step back for some of the other Zoro variants, so it's not as bad as it once could have been. And then 3 retreat is obviously huge, but we do have float stones anyway. Zygarde has 3 attacks. Cell Connector for a DCE does 50 damage, and you can attach 2 basic fighting energy, or 2 fighting energy, sorry, from your discard pile to this guy. That's really good for setting up his other 2 attacks, since they both cost DCE plus 2 fighting, so that works really well. Got plenty of ways to discard fighting in the deck. And it's just nice being able to power yourself up rather than relying on elixirs, which again you should be hitting, but you know, sometimes you'll miss, things like that. We're not actually playing elixirs in this build, we've gone for a bit more of a consistency build, but you can definitely play elixirs if you want another way to power up your Zygardes. Land's Wrath does 130 for, like I say, 2 fighting and a DCE. A pretty standard attack, can reach up to 180 with Choice Banc plus Diancie, which we're both playing. 180 is a pretty nice number, but it's not as good as it used to be. It does mean you can still one-shot Lele's though, which is cool. The real sort of big winner attack on this card is of course the GX attack. Verdict-GX for the same cost does 150 damage, and you are immune to damage from your opponent's EXs and GXs next turn. So this essentially gives Zygarde Hoopa's ability for the next turn, which is really strong. Except you're going to have enough damage modifiers to probably start taking knockouts with this as well. Rather than Hoopa's a very passive deck, it annoys your opponent, but it doesn't quickly take knockouts. It is a 1 prize attacker, of course, so there is that benefit to it. But this is this actually takes sort of knockouts quite quickly, which is really good because it means your opponent has to find resources to get around the ability or the protection safeguard style thing. Whilst losing 2 prizes quite frequently as well. One thing with Hoopa is they have a lot of time to develop a board that can maybe start dealing with Hoopas, because you're only dealing 80 to 110 damage per turn. This guy's dealing at least 150, which is huge, which makes him a threat as well. Of course, with Bonnie we can reuse this GX attack as well, but I'll get to Bonnie when we get to that. But yeah, 4 of our Zygardes. The way we've built this deck is we want to essentially just have a really awkward board state where our opponent doesn't really take any nice prizes if they don't find a way around the safeguard from Zygarde. So we've built it with a very low EX and GX focus. It's pretty much just these 4 Zygarde and 1 more Tapu Lele later on as well. So we want people to be taking out these Zygardes, and we want to make it as awkward as possible for them. If they don't want to take out the Zygardes, we want to have to make them take 1 prize Pokemon, like Octillery. Again, another phenomenal card right now. It's incredible how strong Octillery is. Because of how much Brooklet Hill is about, fighting and water types are just too strong right now. And the fact that this sort of prevents people ending you out of game, prevents people means that you just have access to so much more draw without using a supporter. It's really strong. Obviously we want to be using Bonnie a lot of the time, so that's why we need extra draw anyway. But just the fact that there's so many, we're playing Brooklet ourselves, but there's so many people playing Brooklet right now. Octillery is just so easy to set up and so beneficial in the late game. Don't really feel this guy needs too much explanation, but yeah, it's just another incredible card. Pretty much every fighting deck right now should probably be playing an Octillery. Another card every fighting deck should be playing is Diancie Prism Star, a new card from Forbidden Light. One of these Prism Star cards, so we can only run 1 in our deck, and if it gets knocked out or discarded any other way, it goes to the lost zone, so you can't recover this guy. But the ability is certainly worth it. I think it's called Princess's Veil or something like that. I've only got the Japanese scan right now. but essentially all of your fighting Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage, and it's just a modifier that fighting didn't need but got anyway, and it's crazy how strong this modifier is. It means that Verdict is doing 170 without a Choice Band, which means you can one-shot a Lele just without a Choice Band and become immune, which is really, really strong. Also means you can push up to 200 as well, which is another really, really good number. It means you're one-shotting Buzzwoles, things like that. So yeah, just in general, the card is bonkers. Like, it's, if you think Regirock was played and that was a 2-prize attacker that increased, or there was a 2-prize Pokemon that increased your damage by 10, this is a 1-prize Pokemon that increases your damage by 20. This is essentially 4 times as strong as a Regirock in some eyes. So yeah, the card is absolutely bonkers. It's probably one of the best cards in the set. And as I mentioned, finally, one Tapu Lele. Again, we don't want to play too many EX and GXs because we want people to have to win the game via killing Zygardes. But one Lele is always definitely a good option, just because Bonnie is a really, really important card to be able to carry on cycling Verdict. So we want to be able to find Bonnie when we need it, but also being able to have access to things like Guzma in the late game and stuff like that. You know, we all know what Lele is good for. We're running DCs as well, so Energy Drive is also an option. And in the early game against Buzzwole can sometimes be a better option than Cell Connectoring, because they can often if you have a chance to Cell Connector, they probably have a chance to be able to build 3 energy on a Buzzwole and just knock out a Zygarde anyway. So Lele is a 1-prize attacker, not a 1-prize attacker, a 1 energy attacker via DCE that can also somewhat contest Buzzwole and can hit Buzzwole for a decent amount before they start going out of control. On to the trainers, we have 4 Sycamore. We want to get as many energy in the discard as we can for Zygarde Cell Connector, so Sycamore is going to be one of the ways we do it. Also, Power Draw is really, really good in this deck, just to be able to find your DCE turn 1. You don't want to have to be struggling to Cell Connector on turn 1 if you've managed to ditch the 2 energy already. You kind of need to attack turn 1 with this deck. It's one of the issues with the deck is you don't really have a chance to miss a beat. If you don't miss a beat, the deck is phenomenal, but if you do miss a beat, it can be quite awkward. So we want to be able to attack turn 1 as often as possible. For Bonnie, again a new card from the new set, works incredibly well with Zygarde. The card's built around Zygarde essentially. You can only play Bonnie if there's a stadium in play. You then discard the stadium and you can reuse Zygarde-GX's GX attack, even if for this turn only, even if you've used the GX attack this game. That's really, really good because it means you can Verdict multiple times in a game, which means you can force a huge amount of resources out of your opponent to try and for your opponent to have to knock out these Zygardes. They have to develop 1-prize attackers, they have to find Guzmas, they have to do things like this. And if we're then able to do it again and again, maybe 2 or 3 times, it's going to be really, really awkward because they're just not going to have the amount of resources that they need to be able to still deal with 200 HP Zygardes every turn. We're running 4, but I think you only actually need to probably Bonnie twice during a game, and you should be able to win through just sheer force at that point. I don't think you need to use all 4 plus the 4 puzzles that we play to recover all 4. There'll be games where you need to use them a little bit more, there'll be games where you need to use Bonnie a little bit less, but I think in general 2 or 3 Bonnie per game is probably going to be enough to suffice and get you through the whole game, but we have the option to. It's another card that you just want to have access to, so playing 4 makes a lot of sense. Running 3N. The rest of the support account's kind of weird just because we have another 4 of supporter that isn't a draw support, hence why we're running Octillery and we're running some of the stadiums we're running. But still running N is incredibly important. In the early turns, it can be huge to try and disrupt your opponent. In the late turns, it can be really, really strong for, meaning they don't have answers. If you're able to if you haven't Verdict-GX yet, if you're able to N in the late game and then Verdict, they have a very small hand size to deal with a Safeguard attacker, which is really, really strong. Obviously you can't Bonnie in the same turn, but if you haven't used Verdict yet, it's still really, really strong. Buzzwoles can go off so fast now, it's not even rare that you'll lose sort of 3 or 4 prizes in the first few turns of the game, and all of a sudden you won't have had a chance to use Verdict yet. So I think it's really, really strong to still have N. We know how strong this card is anyway. Similarly with Guzma, again, we can't really Guzma KO stuff very often. We can often Guzma KO with the first Verdict because we don't use Bonnie in the same turn. So it is still important to have Guzma, plus a lot of these guys, other than Lele, have a huge retreat, so we do have this retreating option as well. But just in general, it's still a really, really important card to have to be able to pick and choose prizes in the late game. Lamb's Wrath is still doing 180 technically with maximum damage modifiers, so that's still a huge amount of damage, which can be the answer to winning a game. So it's still really important to have, even though a lot of the time we're going to be looking for Bonnie. Items wise, for Ultra Ball, again a card that discards fighting energy and searches out everything in the deck. Seems pretty good to me. For Puzzle of Time, we've messed around with a few different recovery mechanisms. Obviously Power Pad is one that seems like an immediate fit, but in general Puzzle is really, really strong for getting back a Bonnie, plus getting back another resource, rather than just being forced to get back supporters with Power Pad. Obviously Power Pad takes a lot less slots, you'd probably play 1 or 2 Power Pads, whereas for Puzzle of Time is a bigger commitment, but I think the flexibility is so much better. It's in my eyes better to be playing Puzzle of Time, I think. Plus double puzzle is actually not as difficult to find. You'd think, obviously Zoroark decks are playing double puzzle right now, and it's super easy to find when you can trade into them all. But with Octillery, plus we're also playing Scorched Earth, it's not that rare that you'll find double puzzle. You can find them relatively easily, especially if you only Sycamore in the first couple of turns and then you're just sticking to Bonnies and Ends. You're not going to be wasting them. There'll be those awkward times where you have to Sycamore one away in the early turns, but in general I think it's going to be a lot more common to find double puzzle than you'd think. 2 Field Blower is really, really important. One, for being able to, we have a way to obviously bounce stadiums anyway, but being able to sort of thin our hand down by bouncing their stadiums for our own. As I've said, Brooklet is everywhere right now, so just hand thinning it can be good. One of the biggest uses of this card is to stop things like Mewtwo from doing a huge dent to you with Choice Bands. Choice Bands are one of the deck's worst enemy, just because a lot of non-EX attackers with a Choice Band can be a bit of a threat for Zygarde. So you want to be able to get rid of Choice Bands and stop them getting value early. So yeah, that's really, really important. Things like Garb, you wouldn't think are too much of an issue, but you want to have Octillery and Diancie online pretty much the whole time they're out. So just in general, it's not as important as it's not necessary as a 3 count, sort of like Zoroark-GX and things like that, to be able to stop Garb, but it is still important to have your abilities throughout the game. We're running 1 spicy Super Potion, because Zygarde is such a beefy Pokemon, because it can tank, you can actually really, really make use out of Super Potion and force. Again, it's another card that really forces resources. This is it feels like quite a grindy deck. It can force your opponent to just require lots of answers, and Super Potion is another card that does that. It's really, really good for making numbers nicer for non-EX attackers. It means that they don't 2-shot you, they sometimes 3-shot you, and at that point Zygarde's probably taking 2 to 3 prizes itself, so you can call that 2.5 prize for 2 prizes worth of Pokemon, so you're making some kind of net gain. And so Super Potion is just really, really strong for making sure Zygarde can tank hits and stopping sort of things like Mewtwo and Mew and things like that from really beetling you over and, putting a spanner in the works, because that's going to be one of the sort of strategies that an opponent will go for. They'll try and set up a Mew or a Mewtwo to start one-shotting or start at least hitting Zygarde, because they only give up 1 prize as well, and they're the only things that can hit Zygarde. We want to be able to force them to have to find more of these non-EX attackers. A lot of lists will only play 1 Mew and 1 Mewtwo and stuff like that, and if you kill both of those, they then have to spend their recovery on those. If they're spending their recovery on those, they're not spending their recovery on things like Lele-is, things like energy if it's Super Rod, that kind of stuff. So in general, it's just really, really good to try and make the prize trades as awkward as possible for these non-EX attackers, because you're going to be one-shotting them pretty much always anyway. So if you can force them to 3-shot you, can actually sometimes take 3 prizes with a Zygarde-GX just on non-EX attackers, which is crazy good. Tools wise, we've got 3 Floatstone. As I said, everything's got a huge chunky retreat. None of this stuff wants to be Guzma'd up. So just in general, we want to have access to be able to move out of the active position. A lot of people will be Guzmaing because they want to be getting around Verdict, so it is important to have access to free retreat. And 3 Choice Band, as I mentioned, it makes Zygarde's maths pretty nice. Lots of sort of good numbers come into play, come into sort of access with Choice Banc, it means that we can one-shot things like Lele, things like Buzzwole eventually, stuff like that. So it's really, really important to have, because we are essentially a Hoopa mill deck, or a Hoopa stall deck, but we want to actually take prizes rather than just do 80 or 110 a turn. We want to be doing 180, 200 a turn, which is huge. Finally, onto the stadiums. We need a lot of stadiums for Bonnie. So we are kicking it off with 3 Scorched Earth. Really, really good way of drawing cards plus setting up Cell Connector, especially in the early turns. It's really nice to be able to carry on drawing cards. Also, being able to draw cards without using your supporter because you've Bonnied for turn is really, really important in this deck to be able to carry on finding energy to set up backup Zygardes and stuff. So yeah, it's really, really important to have those. Plus, obviously, we need a huge count for Bonnie anyway. And 3 Brooklet Hill. Again, searches everything in the deck other than Lele. Brooklet Hill is insanely strong right now. A lot of people are playing Brooklet Hill anyway, so you'll have a lot of people. You'll have Brooklet Hill in play a lot of the time anyway. But just in general, having access to 3 of your own as well is just going to up the consistency of the deck tenfold pretty much. Finally, onto the energy. Zygarde's first attack can be accessed with DCE, so we are running 4 DCE, and again means we can Lele, stuff like that. 1 attachment retreat for a lot of these guys as well. And we're running 10 fighting energy. We've chosen not to run strong because you can't attach them via Cell Connector. This list is like a super simple setup Zygarde list, though you can indeed try the strong build. Maybe you could take out some Puzzles of Time and go for the Power Pad build and maybe try Strongs instead. It does reach to 20 with the GX attack, which is another really, really nice number. It means you're one-shotting a lot of other Pokemon, things like Lucario, Golisopod, all of that good stuff. You're then one-shotting anyway. But that being said, we just wanted to go for a super simple, get energy in the bin and attach them via Cell Connector, and then start Verdict GXing all over the place. So yeah, it's definitely a consideration. The couple of cards I mentioned, as I've said, things like Power Pad could be played, things like Strong Energy. But just in general, I think this build's kind of simplified down and condensed down to the nitty gritty and what the deck wants to do. So we've just gone for a consistency build for the channel, and maybe come streams we'll start playing around with some counts and see what else this deck can do. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the IRL deck analysis videos from, actually Joe didn't do them, but I did, and hope you've enjoyed the PowerPoint ones from Joe. As I've said, we have Forbidden Light now on PT Joe, so hopefully that will be where we're moving as of the next few days, plus streams. Joe streamed 3 times yesterday, so plenty of streams, plenty of stuff to be doing, plenty of stuff to be watching. Getting ready for, I think it's Roanoke. I don't know if that's how you say it, but there's definitely a regional coming up very soon with Forbidden Light legal. So get your testing in, and we'll see whether any of these decks come up to fruition. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from OmniPoke, and I look forward to seeing you guys in another video.